All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much to all of our presenters for the wonderful information that you've shared. I think that we've gotten some questions in that I want to make sure that the whole group has a chance to hear both the questions and the responses. First, there was a question that came in terms of sort of what's a good way to refer to supports for English learner students without calling them necessarily like special supports. Um, for example, the supports can often be different, say, for example, for speech language impairment or autism spectrum or developmental needs. And so, Jose, you had provided an initial answer for this through the chat box, but I'm wondering if you'd like to speak a little bit about this for the group.
Sure. So one of the ways that we refer, in CMSD, we're very big on our acronyms and very big on our vocabulary. So what we try to do is that when we see that there's a need or an aspect of a child that needs to be referred to, part of the ways that we refer to those have been what are the children needs in order for them to be successful, what are the family needs, what are the family's wants, trying to stay away from the word special needs, because having been a former teacher and administrator of ELs and a former SPED teacher, those were one of the acronyms that really got me to the point of frustration. So we usually try to refer to as needs and wants rather than special. We try to stay away from the word special.
Thanks, Jose. Ms. Tarazona, I think that you also had a response to share and some thoughts on this. I don't know if perhaps you're still muted. Feel free to unmute yourself if so. Okay, well, we'll give Ms. Tarazona a moment to unmute herself.
I'm sorry, we missed the question.
Oh, I was simply asking for you. It looked like you had started to have a response to this question about how to refer to supports for EL students without calling them special needs. And you had written to the chat box something about students with exceptionalities, but I wondered if you wanted to share more with the group about your thoughts on this.
So we indicated students with exceptionalities due to the fact that not all students have special needs. And so there's a wide range of topics that we can discuss within the exceptionality. We could discuss from language needs to behavioral to advancement. And so we use the term exceptionality instead of special needs.
And in New Mexico, even gifted education typically falls in the realm of special education. So the gifted and talented is in that same umbrella, and I know that's different for our state, so that's just usually how we refer to it. So if you're labeled as special education, you're not only a student with a disability, you can also be a gifted and talented student.
Yeah, that's really useful. It's true that there's a lot to dig into in terms of students who are English learners and students who have some kind of IEP type supports, and I think we could probably devote an entire webinar just to that. But certainly it starts with the right way to acknowledge these students and their needs. So thank you all for your thoughts on that. We did get another question about specifically in Cleveland, the family needs assessment. And the question was a couple of parts to it. When is the family needs assessment administered? Who administers it, and who is it administered to?
So our family needs assessment is our way to basically find out what the family needs are. So the family needs, ideally, the family needs assessment is administered upon enrollment as part of the enrollment experience, although our current district families come in to our Welcome Center, and they see our family coordinators, both the Family Engagement and Student Supports Coordinator and the Refugee Services Coordinator. So if one of the coordinators is not in the office, which usually happens because they're all over the district, there's only 2 of them in 106 schools, our registration specialists do provide that needs assessment to the family. Once the family has documented what their needs are, or they're able to provide a more in-depth explanation of what their needs are, the completed assessment is then handed over to the family engagement coordinators, and they will then reach out to the family to get a deeper understanding. Our coordinators, like I said, since our coordinators are all over and dealing with so many items at the same time, if they are not in the office, then our Welcome Center staff will provide that assessment. Once that happens, we then take our rubric, and we then classify the needs once we have had that interview with the family, which usually within 24 hours of the family coming or calling or identifying a need, we will reach out to them. Then a deeper interview goes into place where our coordinators will then classify the needs based on the rubric in a scale from 4 to 1, and usually our emergency rated cases are handled first, depending on what the rubric results are.
Great, thank you, Jose. Well, and I think it's really interesting to hear about, you know, what you do and to sort of really sort of reach out and connect with the families of these students, particularly given in our research study together, we found these really strong positive associations of you know, different aspects of school climate with the outcomes of the students, of the English learner students, in particular their speaking. And I'm curious to maybe just ask you a little bit more in terms of, you know, how you view your role in supporting positive school climate, and like what you think are ways to, in particularly positive support English learner students, maybe in that production phase, like you were talking about earlier.
So part of the initiatives that we have is that we have to recognize as education professionals of English learners that our students come with tons of baggage. Although they come with tons of baggage, I'm sorry, I think I just got muted. Although they come with tons of baggage, they also come with a wealth of knowledge. And I think that the sooner the education world understands that, the better off everybody would be. Part of the initiative that we have in our department that we've kind of spread out throughout the district is that families and students have to feel welcomed and wanted, regardless of their language barrier, regardless of how they see their current situation. If you are greeted in the morning with a smile on your face every day by your teacher, by your school principal, by whomever it is that that is greeting you in the morning, and you are treated in a sense of respect, regardless of whether you can understand that individual, you're going to want to come back. I think that that's one of the major points of trying to make that acculturation piece so important, because unless our students are feeling welcomed and wanted, then I think that's key. Secondly, or furthermore to that, we also have to realize that when we do our conditions for learning survey, students are being honest. And those particular results are shared not only with school staff, but it's also shared with the student body. And it's also shared with the student body in their native language. So it's important for them to understand that their voice matters and how they feel about school matters.
I think that also resonates a lot with what we heard from our colleagues in Las Cruces. In particular, I noted, you know, for our colleagues in Las Cruces, as you were describing the different ways that the Welcome Center sort of reaches out and tries to engage students in different aspects of school life, that you noted that you have this particular goal of helping students finding their sense of belonging in the school. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about that, and, you know, in particular, I guess if there's any sort of challenges that you've identified with helping students find their sense of belonging in the school, and, you know, what might be your successes for meeting that challenge.
So some of the challenges that we primarily face is obviously the language barrier. But what we try to do is, thanks to our translation and interpretation department, we are able to provide interpreters or translators to be active participants in all of these school activities. So we submit our documentation to request these interpreters or translators, and they join the students or the parents at these extracurricular activities or school meetings, etc., to get them involved and be part of the decision-making process of our school. And so we really try to limit the language barrier so that that is not one of the main reasons for the lack of participation. I would say that another challenge is time and transportation. Many of our kids lack transportation, specifically the school where I'm located. We are on one of the outskirts of our Las Cruces, and so our bus route doesn't go to the school. And so the transportation has gotten to be probably the second most challenging situation for these kids in order to participate. However, we have tried to make arrangements for transportation with siblings or relatives to try to get the students to be actively involved in extracurricular activities, and for them to feel included in the school setting and the school culture. I know we are looking at possibly getting activity buses for after hours, and a bus route that could probably go that way. So we are trying to work with community resources to minimize that barrier.
And I think another barrier we have is really getting our families and our parents involved. So one of the other things that our department does is we do the community outreach program. We have the language academy set up, and where parents come in 4 days out of the week, every night. They have an English class, a Spanish class, a computer class. We also partner up with our local university to provide ESL and GED classes. So really the parents feel they get all that information from our International Welcome Center student and family advisor. And once that trust and that relationship has been developed, that's really where we start to see the parents start to come out and attend our events once that relationship has been established. So again, bringing those parents into the community, you know, the majority of our schools are dual language 50-50 models. We believe in bilingualism and biliteracy. And our goal is to continue that model through high school so all of our kids can graduate from Las Cruces Public Schools being bilingual or having that bilingual seal in their high school diploma.
That's great. Those are really, you give a lot of information there. That was very, very useful. And it's true. It's sort of like this. There's this sort of fundamental issue of sometimes, you know, you don't have the ability to connect by language. There can be the practical issue of something like transportation. And then I think this other sort of third piece in terms of you want to connect with parents, and sometimes you need to tap into, you know, the folks around you, whether it's your local university or, you know, sort of other community organizations, to sort of engage and meet people's different needs. It's all super useful. I wanted to check in about something you said in a sort of similar vein from what you brought up about something so it can be more of like a practical challenge, like transportation. So one thing that we found in the report is, you know, these findings that suggested as you have, you know, sort of a set number of ESL or bilingual paraprofessionals staff who are really sort of trained to support English learner students. As the number of those staff are working with more and more EL students within a school, that this is associated with decreased performance for the English learner students in terms of speaking proficiency or math achievement. And certainly one of the perennial challenges of being able to support English learner students is having enough staff in place. I'm wondering if we can hear from both Las Cruces and Cleveland in terms of, do you have any challenges with finding, sort of the appropriate staff in place, training the staff that you have, and if so, how you meet them, like what has been successful for you?
So in terms of Cleveland, and I think this is a nationwide issue, we face every year the finding appropriate certified staff, at least in the northeastern part of the nation. Is very difficult, and it's more difficult nowadays because the education majors are less and less every year, let alone add that layer of teaching English learners. So part of the initiative that we have is that we are using our bilingual paraprofessionals as a track to teaching. So we have partnered up with the universities, our local universities, and we are working on a grant to continue the education of these bilingual paraprofessionals in order to gain them as teachers. I think that growing our own is the best way. And that's how we're trying to meet the needs of property EL licensed staff.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jose.
So in Las Cruces public schools, we usually for the last 2 or 3 years is really when we have begun to see the struggle for bilingual teachers. As you know, we are located right next to El Paso, Texas. We're 45 minutes away from the border with Juarez, Mexico. So usually years back, we did not have many issues filling bilingual positions. However, in the last 3 to 5 years, we have seen a decrease of bilingual teachers coming out of the university. Our teachers need to have a modern and classical language degree on top of the TESOL endorsement in order to be able to teach, in the secondary, plus their content expertise. So we have seen the challenge. We have started a cohort to provide TESOL endorsement to our teachers from Las Cruces Public Schools. Another thing we noticed looking at our data is that we do have a lot of bilingual endorsed teachers that are currently teaching at a program. So we have started a campaign to try to recruit them and get them back into teaching within program. And right now we work with 2 of the universities, New Mexico State University and the University of Texas at El Paso, in recruitment such as job fairs to try to bring in people from different demographics.
Very interesting. That's great. And very interesting to hear about your changing context over time. Well, I know that we are coming close to time here. I wanted to mention that, of course, you might have seen in the chat box, we really do appreciate everybody's feedback. If someone is jumping off, if you're able to make sure to either click on the link, or as you jump off, you'll be prompted to respond to a quick survey. We really do value all feedback that you can provide. So thank you in advance if you can just take a few minutes to respond. I also do want to, before we close out, see if there's anyone who has just one more question to ask any of our presenters today. I think we could have time for one more if there was something that anyone wanted to ask. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I do want to note that there will be a recording of this webinar available on both the REL Midwest and REL Southwest websites, along with a copy of our slides and also links to all of the different resources that we have mentioned today. I definitely want to give a huge thanks to all of our presenters for your time and for sharing all of your insights. And thank you all for attending and joining us today.